Hi guys, I'm Ellie and welcome to Susty Talks. In this episode, I'm talking about the time that I was stalked at a nature center. I am going to also touch on the fact that I worked at a thrift store for about 3 years and exploited the whole time. And then also how I am struggling as a poor BIPOC 28-year-old Susty fashion content creator. So just a warning, this is a bit of an intense podcast episode. But if you're new to Susty Talks, this is a community-centered podcast where I basically have very genuine and authentic conversations about ethical fashion, sustainable change, and intersectional solutions. And hopefully it becomes an online space for all of us to take more positive action and to empower, change and to just make sustainability more accessible and relevant to everyone. This is an entirely self-funded initiative, and if you want to support my efforts to rehome vintage clothing at a very affordable price, you can look at my Depop and my eBay. The links will be in my description if you want to support sustainable fashion that way. And I'm also working on a Mexican artisanal fashion collection where I will basically be upcycling vintage denim and just putting my Mexican artisanal skills to the test, and will be released around October in Chicago. And I really do hope that the collection tells stories that challenge the mainstream narratives in the fashion world and inspire more upcycling. So that's a little bit about me. But to get into the podcast episode, as I said in the beginning, I was essentially stalked when I worked at a nature center. I was about 22 years old. I was doing a lot of activism work online, and I hadn't really been out in the workforce for years. It was a rough time for me because it was right after the COVID lockdowns, and it was just weird being back out in reality. And I took on the job knowing it was very low pay. They paid $14.25, I believe. I had 2 college degrees. I still have 2 college degrees. And it was very little hours. It was either early in the night or late in the evening. So I was always there when either there was no one around or everyone was leaving. So either ways, I was always kind of the last one to come or go. And the nature center, it was within a park. And this park was basically in a very rough side of town. I wouldn't really recommend people stay there late. There was known gang activity within the parking lots of this park. And so the nature center was kind of right next to that parking spot. I cannot confirm or deny drug transactions, but I definitely know that police were always, roaming the place in case there was any illegal activities, and usually there was, some arrests. The police were there all the time. But just for the sake of legality protections and for anyone listening in my home city, I'm just gonna say allegedly there was some crime activities that involved illegal substances, and I would drive past that parking lot every single day to get to work. But for further context of why I'm talking about this story, I recently was watching a Twitch streamer. Her name is Valkyrie. And she is an amazing streamer. She's been doing it for years, about 10 years actually. She's about 33 or something, super talented, and she was live streaming for the longest time on YouTube, but then made a transition to Twitch after her contracts changed. And she decided to do a 7-day stream with another girl called Sinna, who is also very talented, very charismatic, recently got an award for the best streamer of the year. So these top girls, are streaming their lives away 24/7, and on the last day, they decide to collaborate with someone else called Emiru, which is a gamer girl. She's very, very known in the Twitch community. And so they go to this amusement park, and this guy comes up to them asking for photos, which is kind of normal for them. That's not a problem, I would say. But then he comes up later, he changes his clothing, And then he's like, hey, can I have your phone number? And then Emma Rue is like, no, like, I don't know how to use a phone, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's casually rejecting him. She doesn't know him. Like, she's just trying to hang out with her friends. And he then gets really mad and basically starts attacking her and threatening her. And the girl is saying, like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, how dare you? Like, yelling bad words to them. And the cameraman, you can tell, is like literally trying to hold him back because he's like lunging at these girls and threatening them. And then the girls say that they saw him try to reach into his pocket, and at that point they're like, oh my god, he's got a gun or he's got something, you know? And they like start running, and they have to literally hide in a store. And luckily, like, the associates like believed them, and they like hid them in the store, called security and escorted them out, and like the police followed them home so they could make sure they got home safely. But like, you can't do anything nowadays without like having a man just be all up in your grill and like literally killing you or wanting to kill you because you rejected them. Like, that's the point in our life that we've reached where like people feel such a sense of entitlement and such a sense of like, I don't know how to say it, but like weirdness towards women, like they're objects. And if they get a no, then it's like, well, you're not worthy of existing anymore. And I've definitely felt that, but on a much smaller scale. I think a lot of women have been faced with struggles of, you know, being disrespected and threatened or stalked even, but I'm only going to talk about my own experiences. But basically, I would go to this park really early in the morning, and turns out there was a guy that was around 50 years old that would basically look at me every single time I would open up the nature center, and then like wait until I was done with my shift around like 6 p.m., which was usually on the weekends, and would just like look at me. And I thought he was a very like avid nature lover. There was like trails behind the nature center people could walk in, and I just thought he really loved nature. So I didn't really pay attention to him. Like I said, I was a real busy person. I was an activist. I was building out this like whole movement for this environmental justice place. So I was like locked in. I was not paying attention to him. Otherwise, like I would have been like, oh, this is kind of sketchy. I would have been afraid, but I wasn't being paid enough. I had very little hours. It was like the summer. I was either half asleep or just so done with my shift. So I didn't really notice. But one weekend we had an event where families could... Oh my god, my fan is literally blowing dust in my ear. But let me fix this while I talk to you guys. But basically, one weekend there was a family event where it was a very atypical event, okay? Like, there was a lot of people. And usually when I worked the weekend shift, there was a couple people here and there visiting the nature center because we had like turtles and like rabbits and like little fishies that people could go see within certain hours. But within this event, it just like brought in so many different people than usual. And I don't think the guy was expecting this. And I don't think he realized that there was a lot of people in the building. He should have realized because there was a lot of cars parked outside of the building. But luckily for me, he wasn't the brightest man in the world. And so I'm leaving, you know. I'm not, for the first time, the only one leaving the building. I am not alone. Because typically I'm alone when I'm closing the building. Like, I'm the last one on the premise, the only car in the parking lot. But this time, it wasn't the case. And this man literally comes up to me and he says, "Is that your car?" And he points to my car. I'm like, "Yeah, it's my car." And I keep walking to my car like, why is this man asking if this is my car? Maybe he wanted to park there. It was like maybe just out of my own naive mindset, like, oh, okay, he's coming at me with a friendly mindset, you know. And I didn't remember that like I had seen him before, but in my head something kind of consciously or unconsciously clicked where I said, thank God I recharged my cellular plan, because at that point I had not been recharging my plan. I had no data all the time. Like, I literally was cheap and did not want to pay my cell phone bill. And it was like a pay as you go thing. So this month I had decided, for some random reason, it was in my head, I was so paranoid, that I need to recharge my plan. So literally the day beforehand, I had, called my service plan and been like, hey, can I like restart it, revamp it up, you know, have it work. And by that day, like, it was working. But in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my God, like my phone can work if I need to make a call. That's all I thought about. And then he comes up to me and he's like, your wheel. And I noticed he didn't really speak a lot of English. And I lean over and I'm like, what about the wheel? And in that moment, looking back, he could have hit me. He could have like done something to me because I leaned over and my car was all the way in the back, all the way down the parking spots. And the cameras don't reach all the way down there. And I used to park there just so that everyone else could get the best, you know, spots right in front of the center. But looking back, that was also a mistake that could have, you know, cost me heavily. And I stupidly look over at the tire he's pointing out at. I'm like, what's wrong? And then because I noticed his accent, I'm like, okay, let me speak to him in Spanish. I'm like, ¿qué pasa? Like, what happened? And he's like, it's low, está bajo. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, these are new tires. I literally replaced them like 2 months ago. And so I kind of got irritated because I'm like, I literally spent like $300 on these tires. And he was like, oh, it's low. And I was just looking at the tires. And then he's like, do you want me to help you? And coincidentally, he was parked right next to me. And I look over his car. And that's when a red flag in my, you know, brain went off. And I'm like, this just seems so coincidental, you know? And how did he notice my tire was low? Because he was parked here and I was parked there, and it was the back tire, and I was parked all the way at the end. So like, why would he walk over and happen to notice that? Like, where was he going to notice that? Like, I was literally the last one in line. So I felt like, how did this happen? Like, was it on purpose? I started suspecting him at that point. So I pull out my phone and I follow my instinct. And I'm like, let me call my mom. And I said, give me a minute. I'm going to call someone. I'm going to make a phone call. And he did not like that. He was just staring at me, like dead on, just staring at me. Like a normal person when they offer help and casual or something, he was just like intensely looking at me. And that kind of gave me the creeps. And when I was calling my mom, I was like, please pick up, please pick up, please pick up. Like, please, like, this does not feel right. And she answers. I'm like, hey, like, I'm trying to leave work, but my tire is low. I don't think I can drive it. Should I drive it? Or do you think I should like fill it up with air or something? And she's like, why don't you just drive it home? I'm like, but I don't think it's gonna make it. Like, I don't even know if it has a hole in it, because that's what the guy was saying. Like, maybe there's a hole in it. And I was really nervous. And I didn't have money to like get a what's it called? Those machines that like get the car and like take them somewhere else. In Spanish, it's called a grúa. And I was like, fuck, I'm like screwed. And I asked her, like, should I just like take it to a local mechanic and like have them see what's wrong with the tire and fix it right now, right here? But the other guy that was listening to the conversation, because he clearly understands Spanish, he's like, oh, I'll take you. And then I explained to my mom in front of him, like, there's this guy that like noticed and he told me about it. Like, he's offering to help me. Like, what should I do? And then she luckily asked me, like, is there anyone else that can help you? Because she could like hear me very stressed and I was very uncertain. I was like, oh yeah, there's other staff in the building. Let me go get them. And right at that moment, all the other staff members were like preparing to leave from this event. And when I look over and wave at the staff members to help me, which one of them was the executive director of the nature center, the stalker guy looks over and notices all the staff is leaving, and he's so surprised. And I was like, why is this man surprised? But he wouldn't budge, he wouldn't leave. And I said, it's okay, you don't have to worry. My like team members, like my team will help me now, like, don't worry about it. But he was not budging. And I call over the executive director, and she's like, and I was like, hey, like, something happened with my tire, can you help me? But the reason why she came over so willingly to help is because this guy has had a history of being a nuisance at the center, where he literally pees in front of kids, where he's literally like snooping around in very odd times, and has done various different things to different people that just seem like passive aggressive, like harassment basically, but no real harm has happened so far except, you know, public indecency. And they've try to arrest him, but there's like literally no proof, and that's why they had so many cameras, and that's why she was like so willing to help and was so cautious with me, or with him and us in the scenario. And basically she drove to a auto shop and I followed her, and there we explained to the mechanics like, hey, like we have some situation with the tire, I don't know if there's like something in it or if it's just low, whatever. And the thing is, the stalker guy literally followed us to the place. He literally followed us to the place in his own car. So in front was the executive director, and in the middle was me driving the car very slowly, nervously, because I didn't know if there was a hole in it. And then behind me was the stalker guy, when I literally had told him, we don't need your help anymore, like it's okay, but he insisted so badly. We go to the mechanic place. The executive director is trying to like put distance between me and the guy, and I think he gets it because he's like hovering away. He's not even part of like the solution anymore. And I now get the sense that he's probably done something to my car. And I think the executive director realizes, but we don't say anything, but she like sticks by me. The mechanic literally says, your tire was just low. And I was like, what do you mean? Like the air left? Like how would it get so low? Like in the morning it was fine and these are brand new. He says, I think someone took the air out, or like maybe you drove over a certain part that like blew out air. Like I don't remember. He was giving me a bunch of theories of how maybe the tire was defective, or like something happened with the pressures or whatever. But he says the tire's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with it. Like from the outside, like there's no holes, you know. Me and the executive director just look at each other, and we kind of both know that the guy like took the air out of it. Like the stalker took the air out of it. And at that point I'm like freaking out, and I get in my car, and once I get in my car, like the stalker guy like leaves, and he didn't even say bye, or he didn't even like check in when we were at the mechanic place. He was just standing there, and I was like, this man literally took the air out of my fucking tire. And I don't know how many times he's been watching me. I don't know how long he planned this for, but like, can you imagine if I had gotten in his car, or if I hadn't had so many people helping me? Like that would have been a very bad scenario. And the thing is, the reason why I get into all these details, it's not to be like super hyper focused on the miscellaneous or like whatever, but like these are the things that make up your life. Like imagine if there had been no event. Imagine I had been alone. Imagine if the cameras hadn't been able to pick up what had happened, if he had done anything. What if I hadn't, refilled my cell phone plan, and I couldn't end up making that call with my mom? I probably would have just trusted in this Mexican man based on just the loyalty I have to my culture. What if my executive director hadn't felt a sense of desire to help? Like there were so many different things that could have made this such a different outcome. And I'm really grateful nothing really happened. Like afterwards, they told me to park in front of the nature center. They informed me that there's going to be more security and more cameras, but I was always alone. I was always alone no matter what. So I decided to quit about 2 weeks after, especially when all the staff kept asking me what happened. They kept asking me the scenario, the details, and that was very traumatizing. I was literally 22 years old, and no one deserves to be, re-explaining literal trauma, because that shit affected me. I felt so disturbed that someone had the audacity to literally take the air out of my tires to get me in a scenario where I could get in his car. I don't even know what he would have done to me, but I can only imagine if he has records of public indecency. And what world am I living in where I have to be figuring out where can I park my car so the cameras can capture if a guy happens to do something to me because he's obsessed? Those are things that really bother me. And this scenario I got reminded of it because of this live stream incident, which is very unfortunate. But as someone that's now venturing also into content creation, it also brings up a lot of fear as well, because it's an online journey, and I don't know who's watching. I don't know who you are. Maybe you're a friend, maybe you're a stranger, maybe you're someone that's new in in my channel and just want to learn more about what this podcast is, want to learn about the struggles of my perspective. But I don't know where you live. I don't know your name. I don't know your family. I don't know anything about you. But you now know me, like you know my stories, you know a lot of nuances that I don't really go around telling to, you know, anyone. So I feel like there's this like sense of like relationship where like it's called parasocial relationships online, where like you know me but I don't know you. Like I'm literally just staring at a camera. Like I have no idea how you're perceiving me. I have no idea if I'm making sense to you. I don't know, like I have no context of who I'm speaking to. So sometimes content creation can feel a bit weird, a bit in a way extractive, because it's a one-sided, you know, relationship. But yeah, I've always wanted to do sustainable fashion content creation, and there's been many reasons why I haven't like done more content. But one of the things I've never mentioned before is the fear of like that one-sided parasocial dimension of things. Like I wish I knew who I was talking to. I wish there was like this graph with everyone's faces, with their legal name and their like birthday and where they're from and their jobs and like just basic information about them, like little facts, just to know who I'm actually connecting with. I don't, and that's a fear. Like I don't know if the stalker is watching me. I don't know if some evil person wants to harm me and they're trying to get little bits of information from me through this video. I don't know, but I'm always paranoid about that. But also, like, I'm 28 years old now, and I feel like I've experienced a lot of different scenarios that has helped me get a better sense of how to keep myself safe. And I have a better sense of morals and values that I think will really guide me forward in making the right decision with people. But as a 28-year-old, I feel like I'm so behind compared to everyone else. Like, I see, you know, 17, 18, 9-year-olds pursuing their dreams, and they're so successful and have like 1 million followers or 1 million subscribers or part of these amazing content creator groups. And I'm just like, how are you guys so far along this young? Like, it's so dangerous out there, and like you don't know what's gonna happen. And I don't know, it's a lot to process, like being online. I think it's a highly unnatural thing. I've mentioned that beforehand, but for me, I really enjoy it because I struggle with like interpersonal relationships. But hopefully, like in the future, my content creation becomes a way to connect more with people in real life, you know, like discussing their perspectives or doing like fun challenges in real life that's captured by a camera. So you can learn, you know, about sustainable fashion, ethical fashion, intersectional solutions vicariously through these videos and hopefully apply them in real life. But yeah, those are some goals. I really do hope, yeah, that the Susty Talks podcast becomes a thing where like different people just like hang out on a couch and talk and just like, you know, converse and have just genuine moments together. Yeah, that's always been my dream, and I'm now 28 and I've had the same thing in my head since like I was 18. So it's been like 10 years now of like, I want a thrift store, I want to like have a podcast where girls just talk about sustainable fashion on the couch. It sounds so silly, but it's true. I don't know if you guys have seen the Try Guys, but it would be basically fashion girls doing like really fun stuff. But one thing that I asked my mom when it was my birthday, when I was turning 28, is when you got married. And she said that she got married at 25, and then she had her first kid at 27. And I'm 28. So she actually had me when she was like 28 years old, because I was the second child. And that just kind of like blew my mind apart. But yeah, there were so many cool things I did for my birthday. I have never really had good birthdays. When I lived in Montana for 3 years, I thought I had friends in Montana, but like if they don't even like celebrate your birthday with you, like are they really your friends? I don't think so. But this was like my first birthday where I actually like had things to do and people to celebrate with, and where I felt like really cared for, which is really nice. But I just felt I've been feeling so old. I don't know why 28 has been feeling like I've just peaked in life, or like I'm just too old for things. But I wish I didn't feel like that, honestly. Like I know I still have a lot of time. But some of the things that I did for my birthday was I went to a field museum in Chicago, where they had a super special collection called the African Fashion Collection. And basically it exhibited different designers and pieces from African designers. It was me and my little brother that went, and it was super fun. And then we just saw all like the animals they had in there. I've never been, and it's just crazy how I've never explored Chicago. Like, I've always been a very focused person on work. Like, I don't even know what we have as entertainment in Chicago. Like, I've never had so much time to have fun. Like, I feel like I'm living my life for the first time ever, like ever, at 28. So that's a very interesting paradox of feeling like too old for stuff, but then like it's almost like I'm living my life for the first time. I've also been doing a lot of Goodwill bin shopping for my Depop and eBay. I think I bought a little bit too much, so I'm trying to like reduce that down. It was actually also my first time going to Denny's. Again, it's like I'm living for the first time. Like, I've never been to a Denny's, and I didn't know that they have a surcharge for eggs. The egg situation is so bad. That egg situation is so bad that they're like literally charging you more to eat the eggs. This is a meal and they're charging you more for eggs. Like, what is happening? And then accidentally, like, I ended up having 3 cakes on my birthday. I bought a cake, my mom bought a cake, and my dad bought a cake. And usually I'm the one that has to buy the cake. So I was kind of surprised they like both cared enough to give me a cake. But I'm usually the one that's like usually giving myself my own gift or giving myself my own cake. So it was really nice thing that they like showed up that day for me. I think it's because I haven't been able to really celebrate my birthday like really special and like truly in a good way, given everything that was happening to me the last 3 years in Montana. So I think they were just excited to see me like excited and happy and I guess normal for the first time in a long time. And then at the end of my birthday, I just played tennis with my little brother. I haven't played tennis in such a long time. I actually really loved it when I was in my early 20s. And then during the weekend, we actually went to a clothing swap that was hosted by this like sustainable fashion content creator. And then we went to this like Peggy Noti Bart, I don't know how to say it, like nature museum where they had a lot of like plants and stuff, which is really cool. It was not that impressive. It was way too crowded for my liking. I kind of freaked because of that. But yeah, just had a fun time. Like, just had a regular life, basically. I now work normal jobs. I have to deal with normal people. Like, no one's talking about actively building a movement or a revolution or, you know, like going against the system. Like, I kind of miss those very revolutionary people, but trying to make money. Like, I don't have money as a 28-year-old. Like, I literally just started a receptionist job for like $15 an hour, which is kind of crazy how they pay so little to be a receptionist. And it's at this very bougie luxury residence, and I just I cannot get over the fact that they pay so little and they're only giving me 22 hours. And I mean, for me right now, that's kind of decent because I'm literally broke, but it's just insidious how they literally ask for experience. They literally ask for so much requirements. I had to get a physical. I had to get a TB test. I had to get a background check. I needed my fingerprints taken. I needed to fill out 1 million documents, and then I had to sign another 1 million documents in person. I had to give them my driver's license. I needed to give them my social security. I needed to do a 10-hour computer training. And then today I'm going to a 4-hour community training or something. And then that we haven't even gotten me trained into the actual job. And then they're like, you should get the flu shot. You should get the COVID booster shot. You should get like the actual TB testing. And I'm like, what? Why? Like, I'm getting paid $15 an hour. Like, do you really think this is going to become my job in the long run? Like, I just probably will stay there for a couple months. Like, $15 an hour is, it's not okay. I don't know why people think it's okay to pay so little with no benefits. What are people thinking? It's just, that's what I'm dealing with. And then a vintage shop literally hired me to work 16 hours a week, and then it went down to like 12, and then it further went down to 9, and it's run by these college dropouts. And I'm not gonna mention the details of their business, but it's very badly run basically. And they only pay me $16 an hour for 9 hours a week, and then get mad at me for every little thing. They're like, call us. I'm like, okay. They don't even let me price the Depop stuff on their Depop account. I'm the only female on the team, the only person of color, and the only one with degrees. And they don't even trust me to like price stuff. So that just kind of says the dynamic. But as a 28-year-old that wants to do like sustainable fashion content creation, like these struggles really do make up and affect the stuff that I create, the person that I am, and how I move forward. I'm not doing this full time. I do things sporadically. I'm very much human. I don't see any money coming in right now from Depop really, or eBay, or my podcast, or my YouTube, or my TikToks, or my blog. Like, this is not making me any money, so I have to go to these random part-time jobs to fuel this dream. I really feel like I'm gonna do much more content than ever before. Like, I want to focus on having my own space, like my own studio, having like my own pets, having a Dalmatian, a little kitten, opening up my own thrift store. But it's just like unfortunate that there's so much risk when it comes to following your dreams, you know, putting yourself online, wanting to have a better life for yourself, because there's so much setbacks and struggles. I think that as a BIPOC female, I think I'm also more susceptible to barriers to success. That isn't really talked about that much. There has been a trend on TikTok though that I saw just yesterday about how New York influencers are basically like generic and like all look alike and do the same thing. They go to like 6 a.m. Pilates classes, drink their like little matchas, they like all do the same thing, have the same aesthetic, blah blah blah, and they're uplifted more. But that's just like the Western culture of life. Like, the white woman will always hold more sway, not because it's inherently better, but it's just what's accepted to be like the standard of beauty, standard of living, standard of being. They're the ones that kind of are the ones seen as the example of what to be, which is unfair. But it kind of reminds me of the time that I used to live in Montana. So this is like my personal health story. I hope one day I stop talking about Montana, but I used to live in Bozeman, Montana. It's a like touristy place. The way I sustained myself was that I worked at a thrift store for literally 3 years. I worked at this thrift store for 3 years. Oh my god, my eye is twitching because I'm so stressed telling this story and remembering it. I started off getting paid $15 an hour, and that was fine. I was like, this is temporary, I'm probably gonna leave soon. This is after 5 or 6 months of moving to Montana, after I quit like my sustainable fashion job. I was like, okay, this is just to pay the bills, to get the plane back, to figure out things. Meanwhile, there was a lot of donations that would come in Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. That's when we would take the donations, and we'd be open to take them from 9 to 2. I was the only Mexican American working there, and I honestly felt sometimes I was the only Mexican American in the whole town, because that's how little diversity there was. It was just all white people. It was just wealthy white residents or wealthy white tourists. There were so many privilege and entitlements, and I was just surprised. I would go to the thrift store because of like, oh, like we're rich and blah blah blah, and every traveler had like name brands. They had the best athletic gear possible, whatever. But we were really popular with the struggling community of like college students that went to school there and just didn't have a lot of money. So we always had a lot of like young people shopping with us. But one of my responsibilities was to take in those donations and then see what was good and see what was bad. So I literally had to stand at the entrance of the donation place and be like, hi, how are you doing? Do you have donations? And then the person would hand me either a small little bag or like a big box of stuff, or just like dump everything on the floor outside of out of the doors. And I'm like, yeah, I just place that on the floor. Some people would get mad. They're like, how am I going to put my stuff on the floor? I'm like, we don't have space inside. Like, a bag will protect your stuff. Like, it's going to get cleaned afterwards. That was what I was dealing with every day for like hours. And after they would give me the stuff, I would ask them if they needed a tax receipt. They say yes or no, and then I would give it to them. And then they would ask, like, what is this for? And I'd be like, oh, it's for taxes, because you're rewarded in Montana if you donate your stuff. But basically after they left, I would look into what they brought. I would open up the boxes, reach in. Sometimes it was glass, so I had to be careful. I always was watching what was in the box before just putting my hand in there blindly. I've learned my lesson a couple times. I would like poke myself. Again, very dangerous. My parents actually told me various times, like, wear gloves during this job. Wear gloves because everything is so nasty and dirty. I swear to God, people do not know how to donate. I never really listened to them because my hands sweat in the gloves and I would rather just wash my hands. It was a mistake. People would donate like old diapers that were quote unquote unused. They would donate dirty underwear. They would donate dirty clothes. They would donate old notebooks with their love interests and like random intimate stories with guys because they didn't bother to take out the papers in it. They would donate diaries. They would donate the weirdest stuff ever. Sometimes there was really cool things in these donations and I would have first dibs because I was the first one to like sort through stuff. But the amount of trash that I was exposed to every single day was so disgusting. And in that way, they were exploiting my hard work ethic for their own benefit because they did not put anyone else to work in that position. Like, what made the manager think I wanted to be standing and receive all of these donations every single day for hours and hours and hours and hours on end? I do not know. I do not know what I deserve to do this. And she always put me to be the cashier at the busiest times. And I was like, why is she doing this to me? And I endured this for 3 years because to find a good, decent job in Montana was so hard. And mind you, I was earning $18 by the end of it. And that is a lot for a retail job. Okay? So I didn't want to risk it. And it was kind of generally fun. I try to have a good positive mindset. But this job really exposed me to just the amount of trash people give and give and give. And just the racism that managers can have against BIPOC workers in a thrift store. And she was never there to manage either. And because I was the one that was working there for the longest time, I was seen as like the mini manager or like the assistant manager. And I was like, I'm not the manager. Like whenever people started working there, they're like, are you the assistant manager? I'm like, no, I'm just a worker. One time, my manager literally hired 2 new people, had them come in the next day on the same day that she left for a vacation. So these people were literally like, oh my God, I literally ripped my mic out of frustration. So these people were literally looking at me being like, so what are we supposed to do? And mind you, my manager didn't even tell me she was going to do this. She didn't tell me I should train them. So they were just like, so what do we do now? I'm like, the manager not telling you what to do? They're like, no, this is our technically first day. And I literally had to teach them how to handle a cashier and literally tell them how the store works. And I'm not even the manager. It would bother me so much because she assumed I would take up responsibility and she assumed I would do all the hard work. Well, she was literally never there and like she would never help any of us. And she would always schedule me to the hardest tasks in the thrift store. And one of the elements of being exploited in this job was that I was not given the role I was provided, basically. Like, I wasn't being paid to be an assistant manager. Like, I was given the role technically, but where was the extra pay? Where was the verbal consent? Like, I was literally being used for 3 years. And she didn't know I had a business degree. But she took advantage that I was a tenant union activist at the time and like I guess expected more responsibility out of me and like more leadership. And then when I started acting more happy, she'd always be like, oh, you left the union? Oh, you left the union? I'm like, no, I'm just happy today. And then she would like pick at me being like, is the union done? Are you guys like actually doing anything? And I would tell her and she's like, oh, I'll think about it. And she would be so suspicious with me. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? So it was just like a very negative attitude. She was never present. And then we also had community service programs at the thrift store where people who needed to do community service could do it with us. But because my manager was never there, she put all the responsibility on associates, namely me, because I was the only one that ever answered the calls that were coming into the store. Because if I didn't answer them, the phone would just ring and ring and ring and ring and ring. But they would call from their literal correction center and be like, hey, can I schedule, hours to come in? And I hated, people that were like in jail basically would call in because they needed permission from where they were at to come over. And then they would transport them over, and then they would be there, and then they would go pick them up again. And these, I guess, criminals basically, who did like petty crimes, it wasn't anything violent, that was against our policy if they had anything violent happening, but these petty crime criminals would basically just like not do anything. They would literally size us up. They would size up these literal female retail associates that were like from average 17 to like 24 years old, and be like, how old are you? Where do you go to school? Like, do you have a boyfriend? And I literally would always shut down these conversations so quickly, and I would say, I'm too busy, like I need to go right now, which was true because I was the one that had to take in all the donations. And then I would tell them, hey, can you help me with the garbage? Like the garbage was always full because we would get so much garbage in. And they wouldn't do it. They would complain. And then because we got so much stuff in cardboard boxes, we would have to break down the cardboard boxes to put them in the cardboard bin so they can be recycled. They had to be flattened basically. And they would complain when they would flatten about like 15 of them in an hour, and they would come back after taking so much time to flatten some boxes and be like, there's more? You want us to work more? In a joking way, but I literally have gone through pounds and pounds and pounds of donations, and you can't even flatten 15 boxes, and they would get mad at me. And I'm like, bro, like I'm dealing with all these other privileged people, and these little criminals don't even want to do a basic ass task. And I would tell them, can you throw out the trash? And they wouldn't do it. I would tell them to go like, straighten up the store, and they would need like a million explanations of how to do it. Like they had no critical thinking skills sometimes. And it's not to hate on them or to like put prejudice on them. It's just, they were like kids. I was like, you straighten the clothing by adjusting them on the hanger, making sure they're in the right section, making sure they're in the right category. Just make sure that things look neat. I would give them that explanation at the very beginning, and they just were so confused. And then there was this one guy that became a cashier for a certain time, and he was literally like making the whole store so negative. And I told my manager, and she's like, well, we need a cashier. I'm like, can you hire someone else? And maybe we shouldn't have a little criminal handling money. She's like, he's a special exception. He's a special exception. I'm like, he's always talking about us, and he's always just having really weird conversations with the customers. And she didn't listen. But we had to schedule them to come into the store. We had to make sure that they weren't violent criminals. Like, the only way we could do this though was like asking them, what's your crime? And they would get mad at us for asking. And I'm like, this is part of the process. Can you tell me what your crime is to make sure you're not going to kill me, basically? But I would say it professionally, I was like, can you tell me what your crime is? They'd be like, well, I'm like, it's part of our policy. If I don't know what you did, you can't come. And I said, if you don't tell me what the crime is, I'm not going to be able to schedule you. I'm sorry. And you'll have to talk to my manager. I'm like, do you want me to pass you to the manager? Okay, I stole from a grocery store, whatever. I'm like, okay, that was a petty crime. You can do the hours. But so many times they refused to be communicative with me. But they just wanted to come in whenever. They wanted to have their hours done. And I was like, buddy, like, we got procedures here. And I was the one answering the calls because my manager was nowhere to be seen. I remind you. So that's another way of having someone's labor be used and basically like turned for the benefit of the manager. Like, I could have been making $50K based on those responsibilities, but I was only being paid $18 an hour for part-time work. Like, that was not fair to me. For me that wants to have a thrift store, I think you have to be very intentional about the community, outreach program that you have, whether you want to use community service people. There was college students that would come in to do hours because they were caught smoking weed. That wasn't legal on campus. So they had to come in, and they usually were weeded out when they were doing their community service hours, which is kind of interesting. But I didn't like rat them out because, again, like I wasn't being paid enough. I didn't really care, to be honest. And I just said, oh, they have a really very, very, very chill personality. And they didn't like really pay attention to the trainings I would give them. And they would kind of do everything wrong because they were so weeded out. But I was like, the manager's not even here. If there's like no manager or there's no assistant manager at a thrift store, do you really think that things are going to work out? If you have criminals that are not being constantly supervised, they're going to be aggressive to the associates that are telling them what to do. They're going to complain and they're going to hide, because the majority of them did hide behind the dumpster. I don't know if they agreed upon it but by like word of mouth that they could hide behind the dumpster and smoke, but that's not really what they did for hours. Again, I didn't report them because I wasn't the manager. I didn't really care that much. But like, if you don't have very strict supervision with criminals, even if they've done petty crimes, they're going to take advantage of the system. And that causes more work towards the associates and makes them feel unsafe. And also in a place of like, should I go up to them and tell them to work? Should I like avoid them? Should I ignore them? Like, that they've already sized us up. Like, these are men. These are literal hardcore men. And you don't know what their other past history is like. So as the female young staff, we're always like, we'll just leave them alone. We'll just leave them alone. But let's say you are working at this thrift store. You have the hardest position. You just, checked out so many people at the register after the biggest and longest line ever of the day. It's like rush hour that you're given every single day. You are in deep financial crisis. You're barely able to pay rent. And you're in a very stressful tenant union where you don't feel like you can even talk to anyone about what you're struggling with. And you're just kind of like in the motions of everything, trying to deal with everything alone. You have no family in Montana. How much energy are you going to have to tell a grown-ass man, do your one simple task? Like, I was already overwhelmed with everything else. Like, I just cannot deal with one other thing. In a way, I'm kind of grateful that all this exploitation and struggle happened to me, because I really did learn how to manage and run a thrift store by myself. I can tell that a lot of managers just like get by with the labor of very committed and talented people, even when these staff associates shouldn't be this committed, shouldn't be trying so hard given the pay. But some people just really care about sustainability. I ended up learning so much that in a way I decided to stay for that job. Like, I did enjoy that job, even with all its negative parts, even with all the struggles. I really liked seeing all the random shit that would come in, oddly enough, but confirms that I should have my own business and that it would actually do really well, because I'm a very strong communicator. I'm a very strong team worker. Like, the training was so important. Like, I basically trained so many different people for the whole store. Like, I was running the store by myself sometimes. And the manager was in her office, and she was pretending to work 40 hours a week, but she was barely working like 30. This is all to say, like, the stalker incident, being exploited for 3 years at a thrift store, being so old and barely feeling like I'm starting my content creation journey, I think has taught me a lot. But moving forward, like, I'm super excited to like embrace more of my culture and my content. Like, a lot of the gifts that I got for myself were like things like this that are representative of artisanal fashion. I have more cute stuff. I have like this My Melody like McDonald's toy. I just feel like we need more cute, beautiful moments. Like, this little butterfly thing I think will be super cute. Like, I can hang it over here or something. That'd be so nice, actually. I should have hung it up here. But yeah, I got this at the Goodwill for $3 as a birthday gift. Yeah, these are the little things that make my life a bit better. And look at the Hello Kitty cup I got. This is a little birthday haul. That's so cute. My brother gave me this. Yeah, I'm excited to continue to improve my content creation, to no longer be exploited by my job, to have a bit more mental space to do what I care about. Hopefully I can stay safe and not be stalked online. Please don't stalk me. Please don't threaten me. Like, that's literally my worst fear. Like, please Please, I'm just trying to have fun. Hopefully you enjoyed this rambly podcast episode. If you listened all the way through the end, hopefully you resonated with something. Life has thrown a bit of unfair turns to me, a lot of unfair cards, but I feel like I'm now in a position to choose the cards that I want and to play them how I want, and not to hold other people's cards and not to abide by everyone else's cards, and to play my own game, basically. So I'm gonna have so much more fun on my YouTube channel, so much more fun with my podcast, start moving forward in how to build my thrift store, how to build, my content, how to improve. I've been at this for like the past 5 months, trying to figure it out after just thinking about it, and it's been such a journey. And hopefully I can look back at this podcast as a time capsule and just see how much I've grown, and how these moments were basically the building blocks to the future that I deserve and want. So I invite you on this journey if you want to support. Again, I rehome vintage clothing, so if you want something really cool and affordable, then you can check my accounts. But until next time, this has been Susty Talks. Bye.